I never imagined I'd find myself writing a post like this. My name is Jason Bryant, and I'm 39 years old. My wife, Megan, and I had been together for 18 years. We met in college, and right from the start I knew there was something special about her. We were young, but we clicked in a way that felt effortless. We went on countless adventures together, traveling, exploring new hobbies, and building a life that seemed solid and fulfilling. There were struggles, of course, like in any relationship, but we had always worked through them. Our love had felt unshakable, or at least that's what I thought. We had a beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood, a couple of pets that we doted on, and a small circle of friends we would get together with every now and then. Our routine felt comforting. Weekends were spent hiking, cooking together, or simply lounging at home, catching up on shows. It wasn't extravagant, but it was ours, and it worked. I thought we had a perfect life, and maybe for a while we did. But the cracks started to appear when I showed up at her boss's party unannounced. It wasn't like me to just show up uninvited. I wasn't the spontaneous type, especially not when it came to work-related events. But I had missed her that day, and after a long week, I thought it would be a nice surprise. Megan had been busy with her new project at work, and we hadn't had much time to connect. So I decided to drop by and maybe have a little fun with her, break the monotony of the week. Little did I know that decision would change everything. As soon as I walked into the venue, a trendy rooftop bar with floor-to-ceiling windows, the sight of Megan caught me off guard. She was standing with someone I didn't recognize. At first glance, they looked like any two colleagues, but the way they were standing too close, the way he rested a hand lightly on her back, something felt off. I saw Megan smile widely, her body language different from what I was used to. There was a lightness in her demeanor, a carefree energy I hadn't seen in a while. Her posture was stiff at first, but she soon seemed to melt into his presence. I couldn't explain it, but everything in me tensed. I watched as they leaned in to whisper something to each other. Her laughter was clear, unrestrained, and her eyes sparkled in a way I hadn't seen before. I had to force myself to stay rooted to the spot, trying to understand what I was seeing. There was a distance between us at that moment, and it felt like an invisible wall had been built. I tried to shake the feeling, telling myself it was nothing, just a friendly interaction. But in the pit of my stomach, I felt the first stab of doubt. She caught sight of me standing at the edge of the room, and for a moment, her face faltered. The smile she had for him instantly vanished, replaced by a brief look of surprise that quickly turned into a warm, rehearsed greeting. She moved away from him and walked toward me, her eyes softening when they landed on me, but something felt different. It wasn't the familiar warmth I had grown accustomed to. It was a little too bright, a little too forced. "Oh, Jason, this is Mark," she said with an almost too casual tone. "We've been working late on a project. Just catching up." Mark was taller than me, well-dressed in a sharp suit, and a little too eager to shake my hand. There was something about his handshake that lingered longer than necessary, as if he was trying to make a mark. Maybe I was reading too much into it. After all, Megan and I had been married for years. We had our own things, our own chemistry. But there was something unsettling about the way she looked at him when they first met. It was a little too friendly. A little too personal. Was this just me being paranoid? I gave him a forced smile, trying to ignore the storm of emotions brewing inside me. I wanted to be cool, calm, and collected, but I could feel my heart racing. Megan, sensing my discomfort, quickly added, "It's nothing. Just work stuff, Jason. You know how it is." She didn't meet my eyes as she said it. She wasn't trying to be deceptive, but she was trying too hard to make it seem like there was nothing to worry about. The more she said, the more I felt this gut-wrenching unease building up inside me. It was like something was out of place, but I couldn't figure out what it was. It was subtle, like a whisper in the back of my mind, telling me that this was the beginning of something I hadn't prepared for. I wanted to stay, to engage with her, to ask about her day and show interest in what she was up to, but the more I looked at her, the more I felt like a stranger in my own life. She was laughing with Mark again, her smile bright and full of energy. They were in their own little bubble, and I was the outsider looking in. I didn't want to make a scene, so I excused myself, telling her I was going to grab a drink. But even then, I couldn't shake the image of them standing together, laughing like they shared some inside joke I wasn't a part of. As I sat at the bar, nursing my drink and trying to process what I had just witnessed, I kept replaying the scene in my head. Had it meant anything? Was it just a harmless interaction between colleagues? Or was it something more? I wasn't the type to jump to conclusions, but my gut was telling me that something wasn't right. I kept asking myself, had she always been this way? Or was there something else at play? Something I wasn't seeing? Megan eventually found me at the bar, and when she did, she seemed a little too eager to explain. "Jason, I know you probably think I'm being too friendly with Mark, but it's nothing. Just professional. Honestly, it's all work-related. I nodded, trying to be understanding. But deep down, I couldn't stop thinking about how she looked at him, how she seemed so happy around him. It wasn't just the physical closeness that had bothered me. It was the way her eyes sparkled when she looked at him. It wasn't the way she used to look at me. We spent the rest of the evening in silence, and when we got home, I tried to push the incident to the back of my mind. I told myself that I was overthinking it. I tried to chalk it up to my insecurities, but every time I closed my eyes, the image of them together kept resurfacing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, consumed by doubt, by suspicion, by this overwhelming feeling that something had changed, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. In the days that followed, Megan acted like everything was fine. She was sweet, attentive, and affectionate, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She had always been open with me, but now, she was more guarded. Her phone started buzzing more frequently, and when she answered messages, she would leave the room, as though she was hiding something. I tried to brush it off, tried to convince myself that I was just being paranoid, but I couldn't help it. The image of her with Mark at the party haunted me. I needed answers. I wanted to believe that it was nothing, that my mind was just playing tricks on me. But I couldn't ignore the signs. The doubts, the small changes, the way she seemed a little too distant. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I knew that I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. Something was wrong, and I had to find out what. The weeks that followed the party became a blur. At first, I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. Maybe I was reading too much into the situation. Maybe I was just stressed at work or feeling insecure. But then, the small things started to add up, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was definitely wrong. It wasn't just one thing. It was a combination of subtle signs that, when put together, painted a picture I wasn't ready to see. Megan's behavior began to change gradually. It wasn't obvious at first, just little things that didn't sit right with me. She started working later and later at the office, coming home after dinner, or sometimes not coming home at all. She would text me when she was on her way, but it was always vague, running late at work, or, I'll be home soon, just finishing something up. I had never minded her working late before. It was part of her job. But this felt different. Her late nights started happening more frequently, and I began to notice a pattern. On the days she'd come home late, she always seemed a little off, as though she was distracted by something. She would come in, drop her things by the door, and give me a quick hug or kiss on the cheek, but there was no warmth in her touch. I couldn't help but feel like she was keeping something from me. I started watching her more closely, paying attention to the way she behaved, the way she reacted to my questions. There were times when she would leave her phone on the kitchen counter, and I would glance at the screen just as it lit up. She was quick to reach for it, but not quick enough to hide the look on her face. I caught her doing this a few times, this strange, defensive reaction, like she didn't want me to see the messages she was receiving. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone when Megan came in from the kitchen. She had her phone in her hand, and I noticed her message notification pop up. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but there was something about the way she was holding her phone, her body slightly turned away from me, as though she didn't want me to see. "Who's texting you?" I asked casually, trying to sound as normal as possible, but my voice gave away the concern I was feeling. She hesitated for just a moment before responding. "Oh, it's just some work stuff. I'll deal with it later." She quickly slid the phone into her pocket and smiled, but there was something off about the way she smiled. It wasn't genuine. It was forced, like she was trying to convince me and herself that everything was fine. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I kept thinking about that moment, about how quickly she had tried to hide the phone from me. Why was she acting like that? I tried to push the thought aside, but it kept nagging at me, growing louder with every passing day. And then there were the dinners. Megan and I used to spend hours talking over dinner, sharing the little details of our days. But lately, when we sat down to eat, I could tell her mind wasn't with me. She would glance at her phone more often, lost in whatever conversation she was having with someone. Sometimes I would catch her staring off into space, her fork suspended in midair, as though her thoughts were a million miles away. I tried to brush it off, but the feeling in the pit of my stomach kept growing stronger. I remember one evening in particular. We were having dinner at home, just the two of us, and I asked her about her day. She had been working on an important project at the office, so I figured she'd want to talk about it. But instead of the usual enthusiasm in her voice, there was a flatness. She gave me a few vague responses before falling silent, her eyes focused on her plate. It was so out of character for her, and I couldn't help but notice how distant she seemed. "How's the project going?" I asked, trying to break the silence. "It's fine," she replied without looking up, her voice distant. "Just a lot of work to do." I sat there, staring at her, trying to figure out what was happening. It felt like I was talking to a stranger. Megan was never like this. She always had so much to say, always eager to share the details of her day with me. But that night, she was closed off, detached. She seemed so far away, and I felt more alone than I ever had before. Over the next few days, the same pattern continued. Megan would leave for work in the morning, and I would often come home to find her already at the office, still buried in emails or meetings. When she did come home, it was always late, and she would be too tired to talk. She started getting more secretive about her phone and her work, and I found myself growing more frustrated by the day. I didn't know how to address it. I didn't want to sound accusatory, but the truth was I was starting to feel like I was losing her. One evening, I came home to find her sitting on the couch as glued to her phone. She didn't even look up when I walked in. Normally, she would greet me with a smile, a kiss, something. But this time, it was as though I wasn't even there. I stood there for a moment, watching her, wondering if I was just imagining things. But no, this was different. This wasn't the woman I had spent the past 18 years with. "Megan?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. She looked up startled, as though she had forgotten I was in the room. "Oh, hey," she said, her voice lacking the warmth it once had. "Sorry, I was just finishing up some work stuff." I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. "You're working late again?" I asked, trying to keep the tone of my voice casual. She shrugged. "Yeah, just got a lot on my plate right now." But the way she said it, the way her eyes flickered toward her phone, like she was waiting for a message to pop up, it set off alarm bells in my head. I could feel the weight of the silence between us, the growing tension that neither of us seemed willing to acknowledge. I sat down next to her, but she didn't move. She just stared at her phone, fingers scrolling quickly. I couldn't help myself. I asked the question that had been haunting me for weeks. "Are you seeing someone else?" I blurted out before I could stop myself. Her eyes widened, and she immediately put the phone down, her face going pale. "What?" she said, her voice shaky. "What are you talking about?" "I don't know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But something's off. You've been distant lately. You're always on your phone, you're always working late. I don't know what's going on, but I can feel it." She looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. I could see her trying to figure out how to respond, what to say to convince me that everything was fine. But the longer she hesitated, the more I felt like I was sinking. Finally, she shook her head. "Jason, you're just overthinking this. There's nothing going on." But I didn't believe her. I couldn't. Not anymore. I knew there was something she wasn't telling me. That night, I stayed up late, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The images from the party, the coldness between us, the way she had avoided my questions, it all weighed heavily on me. I felt like I was losing my grip on everything, and the truth seemed so much farther away than it had been just a few weeks ago. The doubt had taken root in me, and no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, it kept growing. The day everything changed is still vivid in my memory, as if it happened only yesterday. Despite all the strange behavior, all the signs that had piled up in the weeks before, I had told myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was reading too much into things. After all, Megan always told me that everything was fine. She was tired, stressed from work, and she had simply been preoccupied. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust her because she was my wife, the woman I had loved for so long, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone else. But the growing doubt in my mind couldn't be ignored any longer. I couldn't take the uncertainty anymore, so when I found out about another one of her boss's events, the company's annual charity ball, I decided I would go. This time, I wasn't going to let myself be a passive observer. I wasn't going to hide behind my doubts. I was going to confront the truth even if it hurt. Megan had been preparing for the ball for days. She'd spent hours picking out the right dress, doing her hair and makeup, and telling me how excited she was. She mentioned how important the event was for her work and how she'd been looking forward to seeing everyone from the office. I had never minded her attending these events, knowing they were part of her job. But now in the back of my mind I couldn't shake the thought that something was different this time. On the night of the event, I told myself I would just go for a drink at the bar and watch the evening unfold. I knew Megan was expecting me to stay home, so when I arrived at the venue unannounced, I made sure I wasn't seen right away. I took a seat at the bar, pretending to look over the drink menu, my heart pounding in my chest. I tried to calm myself, but I couldn't stop the anxious thoughts from flooding my mind. I watched as more guests filed into the ballroom, laughing and chatting with one another. The lights were dimmed and soft jazz music filled the air. The event had all the usual markers of a successful work party, elegant, polished, and full of people trying to impress each other. But amidst the crowd, there she was. Megan. She was laughing, standing close to that same colleague, Mark, who I had seen her with at the last party. They were at the center of the group, her smile wide and bright as she leaned into him, her eyes sparkling with joy. I felt an icy chill settle over me. The way they were standing together, it wasn't the way you'd expect a married woman to stand with someone who was just a colleague. It wasn't the friendly, professional demeanor I had been led to believe. They were too comfortable, too familiar. His hand rested lightly on the small of her back, his fingers grazing her skin in a way that was far too made for a casual office interaction. At first, I couldn't bring myself to walk over to them. I stood there, frozen, watching from a distance, my pulse quickening. I told myself I was just being sensitive. It was probably nothing. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I could see it in the way Megan's body language shifted when he spoke to her. She was no longer the woman I knew. She was someone else, someone I didn't recognize. I waited until they moved toward the dance floor, and then, as if my feet had a mind of their own, I found myself standing up and walking toward them. I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling inside me anymore. I had to see for myself. I had to confront this head-on. When I reached the dance floor, my breath caught in my throat. Megan and Mark were dancing together, their bodies swaying to the slow rhythm of the music. She was looking up at him, her face glowing with something I couldn't quite place, something that wasn't for me. Her eyes were soft, filled with admiration as she gazed at him, and she laughed at something he whispered in her ear. I stood there, feeling like a stranger watching a scene that should have been familiar but wasn't. The way her body molded to his, the way her laughter rang out freely, it was like a punch to the gut. For a moment I considered walking up to them, confronting them right then and there. But as I stood there, watching, I realized something. Megan didn't even notice me. She was lost in the moment, her world entirely focused on Mark. I wasn't even a blip on her radar. That thought, being invisible to the person I loved more than anyone in the world, was more painful than anything else I had seen that night. It was then that I realized. All the signs, all the small moments that I had brushed off before, they weren't mistakes or misunderstandings. This wasn't a misstep. It wasn't just some innocent work relationship. This was something more, something real. I didn't need more proof. I had enough. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks, and I felt my stomach twist in a way I couldn't explain. I couldn't bear to stay there another second. I turned on my heel and walked out of the ballroom without a word. I don't even know if Megan saw me leave. Part of me wanted her to know that I knew, but the other part of me, my heart, was shattered and I couldn't stay in that room for one more minute. The cold night air hit me like a slap to the face. I stood there for a moment, trying to catch my breath, but it felt like the world was spinning. My legs carried me aimlessly, and before I knew it, I was sitting in my car, gripping the steering wheel, staring into the empty street. I didn't know where to go or what to do. I was lost. I ended up at a bar I used to visit in college, a place I hadn't been to in years. The neon lights flickered above me as I sat at the bar, ordering one drink after another. It wasn't about getting drunk, it was about numbing the pain, about drowning out the image of Megan and Mark dancing together, about trying to forget the look in her eyes that told me everything I needed to know. The bartender didn't ask questions. He just served me another drink. I kept thinking about Megan, wondering what was going through her mind. Did she think I didn't know? Was this something she had planned, or was it something that just happened? Had she been seeing him for months, or was this just the beginning of something that would slowly destroy us? I stayed at that bar for hours, my mind racing. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at my glass, but by the time I left, the weight in my chest had only grown heavier. Megan hadn't even noticed I was gone. She hadn't tried to reach out to check on me or even ask why I wasn't there. It was like I didn't matter anymore. As I got into my car, I felt a strange sense of clarity mixed with a deep sense of loss. I had the answers I needed, but they were the ones I didn't want. My wife, the woman I had shared my life with, was no longer the person I thought I knew. And as much as I wanted to pretend it wasn't true, I knew I had to face it. I had to confront her. But for now, I just needed space. I needed to process everything before I could decide what to do next. I didn't want to make any rash decisions, not yet. I needed time to think. So I drove aimlessly, trying to push the image of her and Mark from my mind, but it was impossible. It kept replaying over and over like a song stuck in my head. When I finally made it home, I sat in the car for a while, unsure of what to do. It felt like the world had shifted beneath my feet. I wasn't sure if I could ever go back to the way things were. What happened next, whether I confronted Megan, whether I decided to walk away or try to fix things, remained uncertain. But one thing was clear. Our marriage, the one I thought was built on trust and love, had been shattered. And I didn't know if we could ever put the pieces back together. The next day felt like I was walking through a fog, trying to navigate a life that no longer felt familiar. The moments of clarity were brief, and most of the time, I found myself replaying the events from the night before. Megan's laugh. The way Mark looked at her. The way her eyes sparkled as if she was seeing him in a way I had never seen her look at me. The more I thought about it, the more the feeling of betrayal grew inside me. It wasn't just the dance, though that was a clear sign, it was everything that had led up to that point. As I drove home from the bar, the cold, night air still clinging to me, I found myself asking over and over, what now? What do I do with all of this? For a moment, I considered confronting Megan right away. It was tempting, almost like an instinct, storm into the house, demand answers, and let everything spill out in one overwhelming explosion of anger and hurt. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't do that. It would be a scene. A fight in front of God and everyone. And while part of me craved that immediate release, I also knew that wouldn't do anything to solve the problem. It wouldn't heal the wound. It would only rip it open further. I decided I needed time. Time to process everything. Time to think about what I wanted to do next. The shock of the situation was still too fresh, and my emotions were a whirlpool. My mind was moving too quickly, thinking too much, and I was overwhelmed with pain and confusion. But as I sat in the car, parked in front of the house, one thing became clear. I couldn't ignore what had happened. Megan and I were at a crossroads. And what happened next would define the rest of my life. When I walked into the house, it was quiet. Too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator, the rustling of the leaves outside, the soft tap of my shoes on the hardwood floor, these were the sounds that filled the space between us. There was no cheerful greeting, no "how was your day?" No excited chatter about work or the plans we had for the weekend. I could already feel the chasm growing between us. Megan was in the kitchen, stirring something in a pot on the stove. She didn't look up when I walked in, and I could feel the tension in the air. It was palpable. Thick. Neither of us knew where to start. "Hey," she said quietly, breaking the silence, her voice almost apologetic. She didn't turn around to face me, and that stung. It wasn't just that she didn't meet my eyes, it was that she didn't even make an effort to. "Hey," I replied, my voice tight, betraying my nerves. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say. My mouth felt dry, my body stiff with tension. The weight of the unspoken words between us felt like it could crush me if I didn't say something. "I was thinking about last night," I began, the words coming out before I even realized it. I wasn't sure where I was going with it. I hadn't planned this conversation, and I didn't have any idea how to make it less painful. I just knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. "Megan, I need to ask you something." She finally turned to face me, and for the first time I saw the hesitation in her eyes. The doubt. The guilt. She was already preparing herself for the truth, I think. "What is it, Jason?" Her voice was soft, almost too soft. It felt like she was already preparing for me to accuse her of something, and I guess I was. "You don't need to lie to me," I said, my voice firm, though it trembled with a mix of anger and sadness. I saw you with him, Mark. The way you were dancing with him, laughing." "Megan, it wasn't just friendly. It wasn't just work. I saw it in your eyes. It's more than that, isn't it?" Her face drained of color. I could see the fight in her eyes, the internal struggle. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. For a moment, it felt like time froze. Her lips parted, but she couldn't bring herself to admit the truth, and that silence hurt more than anything she could have said. I swallowed hard, trying to hold my composure. "You've been keeping something from me. And I need to know what it is, Megan. I need you to be honest with me. Right now." Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Jason, it's not what you think." I shook my head, feeling the frustration building in me. "Then what is it? What is it, Megan?" "Because I've been trying to figure it out for weeks, but nothing adds up anymore. The late nights, the distance, the secrecy with your phone, and now this. I'm not stupid. I can see what's going on." She lowered her head, her shoulders slumping. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she murmured, and that's when I realized what was happening. She wasn't just defending herself. She was regretting it. But her regret wasn't for me. It was for herself. I took a step toward her, my heart aching. "Megan, I need the truth. No more lies. If you've been seeing him, if there's been something between you and Mark, just tell me. Please. Her eyes filled with tears and she wiped them away hastily. It's not like that, Jason. It was just a few. She stopped herself, her breath catching. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought I could handle it. But I couldn't, and now I couldn't take it anymore. How long has it been going on? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but it was clear enough. I needed to know. I needed to hear the truth, no matter how much it hurt. She hesitated for what felt like an eternity, her lips trembling as she tried to form the words. A few months, she finally said, her voice breaking. But it wasn't supposed to happen this way. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I felt my heart shatter as the reality of her words sank in. A few months. This wasn't just some passing flirtation. This was a pattern. A relationship. She had been hiding it from me for months. You've been seeing him for months? I repeated, barely able to comprehend what she was saying. How could you do this to me? How could you do this to us? I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice shaking. I never meant for you to find out like this. I was confused and I didn't know how to fix it. I never wanted to hurt you. Please believe me. I love you, Jason. I really do. The words stung more than anything. She loved me? How could she love me and still do this? How could she look me in the eyes, tell me she loved me, and then betray me like this? I stepped back, feeling the weight of everything crash down on me. I was numb. Cold. There were so many emotions swirling inside of me, I didn't know where to start. Anger. Hurt. Confusion. And the worst part? There was a small, gnawing part of me that just wanted to make everything okay again. But I didn't know how. I need some time, I said, my voice barely audible, almost cracking under the weight of everything. I can't deal with this right now. Megan nodded, tears streaming down her face. Please, Jason, don't leave me. Please, just let me explain. But I didn't respond. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, alone in the kitchen, her sobs echoing in my ears. I didn't know what the next step would be, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The days after our confrontation were some of the hardest I've ever had to endure. Megan had begged me to talk to her. She texted me constantly, her messages flooding my phone, pleas for forgiveness, assurances that she loved me, and apologies for the way things had unfolded. She didn't want to lose me, she said. But the words felt hollow. It was as if she knew she had crossed a line she couldn't come back from, and nothing she could say would undo the damage. I didn't respond to her messages. I didn't pick up the phone when she called. The last thing I wanted was to hear her try to justify what she had done. There was no excuse. It didn't matter if she was lonely or confused, those were things I could have worked through with her, but she chose to hide behind a secret affair instead of coming to me. I spent the days in a haze, moving through the motions of daily life like a ghost. I would go to work, come home, and try to distract myself by watching television, reading, or doing anything that could take my mind off the nightmare my life had become. But nothing worked. The weight of what had happened pressed down on me every moment, and no matter how many times I tried to shake it off, it lingered in the back of my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about the confrontation, the look in Megan's eyes when she admitted everything. The vulnerability, the regret, the hesitation, it was like she was waiting for me to tell her that everything would be okay. But I couldn't. I couldn't forgive her just like that. Not after everything we had been through, not after the years of trust we had built, and not after the way she had shattered that trust. Despite my attempts to avoid it, Megan kept reaching out. She called me at work, she left messages, and she even showed up at the house when I wasn't home, hoping to catch me. I felt a mix of anger and guilt every time I saw her name on my phone. I hated that she was doing this, but a small part of me felt sorry for her too. She was struggling, I could see that. She was clearly broken by what she had done. But that didn't make it easier for me. That didn't make the betrayal any less painful. A few days after the confrontation, my friend John, who had been by my side throughout this whole ordeal, called me up and asked if I wanted to meet for a drink. I had been avoiding everyone, staying locked in my own head, but John had been insistent and I knew I needed someone to talk to. Someone who wasn't emotionally involved, someone who could give me a little clarity. So I agreed. We met at a bar downtown, a place I used to frequent with friends before everything changed. It was dark, the kind of place where you could sit at the bar and just drown your thoughts in a drink. John was already there when I arrived, nursing a beer and looking as relaxed as ever. "You okay, man?" he asked when I sat down next to him, his tone serious but caring. "I've been worried about you." I shrugged, trying to hide the emotion I was feeling. "I'm just trying to get through it, you know?" My voice cracked a little and I hated how weak it sounded. John studied me for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed. "I get it. But you need to deal with it. You can't keep bottling everything up. It's eating you from the inside." I stared at my glass for a long time, unsure of how to respond. I knew he was right. I knew I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. But at the same time, I didn't know what to do. What could I possibly do with this kind of pain? How was I supposed to make sense of it all? What should I do, John? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I love her, but how do I get past this? How do I even begin to trust her again? John leaned back in his chair, his hands folded in front of him as he thought for a moment. You can't rebuild trust overnight. That's the first thing. It's not something you just decide to do. You need to figure out what you want, whether that's forgiveness or moving on. It's your choice. I don't even know what I want anymore, I admitted, feeling a wave of frustration wash over me. Part of me wants to walk away. But another part of me feels like maybe I should give her a chance to make it right. I don't know if I can forgive her, but I don't know if I can walk away from everything we've built either. John nodded slowly. That's the hard part, man. It's not an easy decision. But you need to take your time. Don't make any decisions based on guilt or anger. You need to think about what's best for you, not what's best for her. And if you decide you want to work through it, that's fine. But you can't just sweep everything under the rug and pretend like it didn't happen. I took a deep breath, my thoughts racing. I knew John was right, but it didn't make things any easier. I had always prided myself on being a rational person, but in this moment there was no rationality. There was just pain and confusion. John went on, offering his advice on everything from therapy to how I should communicate with Megan. She's going to keep trying to get you back. I know that. But you have to make it clear to her that it's not something she can just fix with a couple of apologies and a few tears. She needs to show you that she's serious about changing, not just telling you she's sorry. I nodded, trying to absorb everything he was saying. I didn't want to hear it, but I knew it was what I needed. I needed to face the reality of the situation, no matter how painful it was. That night, after John and I had finished our drinks, I drove home, my mind still swirling with everything we had talked about. Megan had sent me another message while I was out asking if we could meet. It was the same plea she had made every day since the confrontation. She wanted to talk, to explain, to make things right. As I sat in my car, staring at my phone, I realized something important. I didn't have to make a decision right away. I didn't have to let her back in just because she was asking for forgiveness. I didn't have to be the one to fix everything. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had control over the situation. I took a deep breath and typed out a simple response. I need some time, Megan. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk. I set the phone down, feeling a strange sense of relief. I wasn't ready to forgive her yet. I wasn't ready to move on either. But I had taken the first step in figuring out what I needed, and for now, that was enough. It took a few days before I was ready to meet Megan. Every time I thought about it, my stomach twisted. I wasn't sure what I was expecting from the conversation, if I even wanted to hear her side of things. I knew it would be painful, but I also knew I couldn't keep avoiding it. I had already taken my time to process everything. I couldn't continue to live in a limbo of uncertainty. Megan had been sending me messages, trying to make sense of everything, and it wasn't until I saw one final message from her that I decided it was time to speak face to face. I don't want to lose you, Jason, it said. I've made so many mistakes, and I'll do anything to fix this. Please, let's talk. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, reading that message over and over. Her words had the familiar sting of desperation, of someone who knows they've already crossed a line and can't undo it. But this time, there was a glimmer of something else, guilt. And as much as it hurt, I knew she was sorry. She didn't want to lose me. But at the same time, I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive her. The betrayal had cut deeper than I had ever expected. I finally sent her a message back. I'll meet you at the house at 7. That was all I could manage. There were too many things I still needed to figure out, whether I could trust her again, whether we could ever rebuild what we had, or if the cracks in our relationship had already been too deep to fix. The evening came, and I sat on the couch waiting for Megan to arrive. I wasn't sure how I should feel. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to lash out. But the truth was, I didn't know what I needed. I just knew I couldn't continue like this. When she arrived, she looked different. Gone was the confident woman I had married, the woman who always had a plan, always knew what to say. Now she was a shell of herself, eyes red from crying, her movements slow and hesitant. She entered the living room and stopped just short of the couch, unsure of where to sit. I'm sorry, Jason, she began, her voice trembling. I've messed everything up. Her words came out in a rush, like she was trying to get them all out before I could say anything. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I stared at her, trying to read her expression, but all I saw was uncertainty. Her words didn't feel like an explanation, just a defense, a way to shield herself from the truth. She was still trying to make excuses for what she had done, trying to soften the blow. But there was no softening this. There was no magic word or apology that would make it all go away. The hurt had already been done. "You don't get to do this, Megan," I said, the words coming out colder than I had intended. "You don't get to pretend like this is all just a mistake. You've been seeing him for months. You've been lying to me for so long, and you want me to believe it was just a mistake." She flinched at my words, her face flushing with shame. "It wasn't like that. I didn't set out to hurt you. Her voice cracked, and she quickly wiped away a tear. "I didn't know what I was doing. Everything was falling apart, and I didn't know how to fix it. I made a mistake. I was confused." "You were confused?" I repeated, trying to make sense of what she was saying. "What happened to us, Megan? You don't just throw away a marriage because you're confused. You talk about it, you communicate. You don't hide behind someone else's arms to escape." She took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she clutched them together in her lap. "I was scared, Jason. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. We drifted apart and I thought I could handle it. But I couldn't. I found someone who paid attention to me, who made me feel like I mattered." I sat there, my chest tight as her words hit me like a ton of bricks. She wasn't just saying she had made a mistake, she was justifying it as if her feelings of loneliness excused the betrayal. And for the first time I realized something important. This wasn't about Mark. This was about Megan. She had made a choice, and it was a choice I couldn't ignore. I shook my head, the anger and sadness flooding my veins. "So that's it? You felt unseen and thought cheating would solve it? Do you really think that makes it okay?" "No," she whispered, her face crumpling as more tears fell. "I know it doesn't make it okay. But I didn't know how to fix things. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. I was so lost, Jason." I stayed quiet for a moment, the weight of everything hanging between us. She had broken my trust. She had shattered everything we had built together, and no amount of apologies would fix it. "I can't do this," I said finally, my voice raw. "I don't know if I can forgive you."